Good morning, my darlings. It has been a very long time since I have done a news show. But with all the current insanity going on, there's a couple of things that have just come up that could use a little historical perspective. One of the events that just happened is the call out between the Pope and Donald Trump. Now, before I get into this, I want to be very, very clear. Very clear. This is not me in any way, shape, or form saying, oh, yeah, support the Vatican. We all know where I stand on that. But I want to point out the political, social ramifications of certain things that are going on. And more importantly, a little event that could be put forward by the Pope that most people don't know about. There are certain things in canon law that most people don't know, and they don't comprehend them because it doesn't affect them. They're not Catholic. They think of it as old stuff, that stuff back in the Middle Ages. But strangely enough, a lot of those laws still exist. So in case you don't know, Pope Leo, the American Pope, the new American Pope, has been very outspoken about Donald Trump and certain of his actions. Outspoken in a way that is abnormal for someone sitting in the papal chair, so to speak. Now, things have escalated. And one of the things that has come out just in the last 2 days, and at this point, we're going to call this conspiracy gossip because we don't have any proof, but we can take some notes from this. Apparently, the Pope made some statements that the American government didn't like back in January, and they called the papal nuncio, who is the ambassador to the US. Reminder here to everyone, the Vatican is its own country, right? It's its own country. It's not just the church. It is its own country and therefore has its own ambassadors who have all the rank of ambassadors, and they're called the nuncios. So the papal nuncio was apparently called to the Pentagon, which is strange enough right there, called to the Pentagon in January of 2026. Rumor has it that the meeting did not go well, and various statements have made by supposed insiders. One of the inside pieces being that the Pentagon actually purportedly, supposedly, threatened the Vatican. The American military can do whatever they want, and you better fall in line. Which is kind of funny, if you know history. One of the other threats, and again, the War Department has put out a statement saying, no, this has all been blown out of proportion. It was a nice meeting. It was respectful. But they have not actually answered any of the direct questions that are being given out as what came out of this meeting, i.e. that they threatened them to get in line, threatened the Vatican to get in line, and that, and this is a big one, someone brought up the Avignon papacy as a threat. So we're going to go do a little history. It's a history lesson today, darlings. The Avignon papacy happened in the early 1300s when King Philip IV, Philippe le Bel, or the Handsome, basically had Pope Boniface VIII murdered and then forced Conclave to put his own guy on the throne, the papal throne, who then ruled from Avignon, not Rome. And the papacy stayed in Avignon under the pressure of the French government for, I want to say it was about 65 years. as a little side note, this would be the same Pope Clement V that Philippe le Bel put into power, and King Philippe IV of France, who also went after the Knights Templar. And that's how that all started. So for the Pentagon to threaten the Avignon papacy, like, that is a serious threat. That is like literally saying, we will pull you down, have you taken off the papal throne, and then put our own guy on the throne. That's basically what the threat was. Now, the Pentagon has not denied that. They just said, oh yeah, we had a respectful, lovely chit chat over tea, which we don't believe, none of us, because why else would the Pentagon have called the nuncio in to Washington? It it doesn't make sense. And why the Pentagon? Why not the White House? Why specifically the Pentagon? So if it is true that they threatened with an Avignon papacy, little snide comment, first of all, I'm going to say that had to have been pre-planned. Nobody, with the exception of people like me who are ridiculous about history, nobody knows what the Avignon papacy is nowadays. So if someone made that threat, that was a pre-planned thing. That was someone who went out of their way to research and find this kind of little dig, this threat to be used to the nuncio. Okay, so let's just say the Vatican and Washington not getting along right now. To the point of the Vatican, the Pope has totally said, no, I'm not coming for your 250th birthday party. Nope, I'm going to go to some little Mediterranean island instead, which has just been clarified in the last 24 hours. Going back to the original part of all this, the reason why I'm making this report. Canon law is a very, very interesting thing, and it has a lot more power than a lot of people would give it credence for. And by that, I'm not saying, oh, the Vatican. I'm saying, this is what the facts are, people. You better find out. And there's a little thing in canon law that is a card that could actually be played by the Vatican. And that is something called an interdiction. So an interdiction is basically, and I'm going to put it on I'm not going to get into all the bits and pieces of it. Basically, summary. The Pope excommunicates someone sitting in power in a country. Could be a king, it's happened many times. Could be a lord, a duke, a government. Excommunicates that person and then puts the country into interdiction. What that means is that all Catholic services, everything is shut down. For those of you who are not religious, for those of you who are Christian of another denomination, you may think of this as like, who cares? So you can't go to church. Ooh, okay. Let's take a look at this. When the Catholic Church shuts everything down in interdiction, that means there are no weddings, no funerals, no baptisms, no communions. There is no confessional, which under Catholic religious belief means that if you don't have a Catholic wedding, you are not actually married, therefore you are living in sin. If your baby is not baptized, has not been christened, then that baby is not seen in the eyes of God. And if it dies or something happens, it goes to purgatory. Again, I'm not talking about what I believe. I'm talking purely about Roman Catholic dogma. It means that if you die, you cannot be buried on consecrated ground. You cannot have a funeral. You are not read your last rites. For Catholics, this is massive. To give a little bit of a historical precedent on why interdictions are used. In the early 1200s, Pope Innocent excommunicated King John and put the entire country of England and Wales under interdiction that lasted 4 years. When he finally removed the interdiction, the next thing that happened was the signing of the Magna Carta. Do you comprehend? The interdiction on England and Wales was one of the strong-arm tactics used by the Vatican to force King John to the table to sign the Magna Carta. These are major. People want to think, again, that this is all Middle Ages stuff. No, there were interdictions that were done in the 60s, as in the 1960s. Interdiction is still part of canon law. So to put this into perspective, there are approximately 70 million Catholics in America. If Pope Leo was to decide to really get his knickers in a twist, excommunicate Vance, which he apparently, rumor has it, kind of maybe sort of already been threatened, and put an interdiction on America, that means 70 million Americans have basically had their religious beliefs, their religious structures turned off. 70 million Americans is approximately 20% of the American population. That's a whole lot of people being a whole lot of pissed off. Is it going to happen? No idea. No idea. But these are major, major pieces that a lot of people don't comprehend. There is a power within the structure of the Vatican that, while not often swung like a sword, could be used. So it's a very, very interesting time at the moment. And considering how much Pope Leo doesn't like Trump and how purportedly pissed off he is about everything that's going on with Iran, will he throw an interdiction party? No, I don't know. It is a threat that could very, very well be put on the table. And where that leads, that's open to debate. That's open to a lot of debate. And we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, little history lessons in the local news of what's going on right now. I thought some of you might find that a little bit interesting.